the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers, calling in from Indianapolis, where the 49ers and Colts will have at it this weekend in the technically final dress rehearsal, if you will, full dress rehearsal for the regular season, for which there are so many high hopes in Niners country. John Lynch back here on the show. How are you doing, John?
Rich, I'm doing great. It's the season's nearing, and that's always fun. And this third preseason game, which everyone refers to as the dress rehearsal, is always kind of symbolic to me about this thing is getting close, and we've got a lot of evaluation to do, and we obviously want to continue to get better as we near this season and our opener in Minnesota.
So walk me through what you will be looking at evaluation-wise, specifically what you're hoping to see in week 3 of this preseason game.
Yeah, well, so this is one where our starters will play more than they've been playing throughout preseason. So I think this really is a game. I always remember as a player, you want to feel it, you want to go full speed, and you want to kind of get extended snaps and see how everyone deals with that, get in football shape. But then, I think we still have some competitions, at various positions going on our roster. And so we're obviously going to be watching that closely. And then, in my role now, you watch the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter just as closely because, making up that 53 is just vital to the depth of your team. And there's so many different things that go into the equation, how a guy's playing on special teams, how versatile a player is. And so you put them in these situations because some guys perform very well at practice, but they get in a game and it's not as good, or some guys the other way. So I think there's so many different variables to the puzzle, and we're looking at just about everything.
And then we expect to see Richard Sherman out there this weekend, correct?
Yeah, and that's last week in Houston, we went down there and scrimmaged, and I think I saw my first dose of the real Richard Sherman trying to keep him off the field. Kyle said, it's your job. You're my muscle this week because Richard's bound and determined to and I'm afraid he's just going to go run on the field because even though our medical professionals were saying another week, Richard felt like he was ready. So keeping him off the field was you do many things as a general manager. That was my task last week.
Can you walk me through?
I thought I was going to have to get physical.
I was about to say, can you walk me through a little bit of that Stanford on Stanford conversation right there, John?
Well, Kyle, he asked for Sherm asked for a meeting to come talk with Kyle about it, and Kyle invited me in there because he said, I don't want to be in there alone with Sherm. Mm-hmm. I know where he's going. And I said, well, shoot, let's bring Skinny in, a D lineman. We need something bigger than me. But, it's just Richard's very convicted, and he felt like he was well. But, the cool thing about it, he felt like, and I remember this feeling when I went to Denver after my 11th year in Tampa, you feel in a sense like you have to prove yourself to your teammates. And, I think what we try to impart on him is take that out of the equation. These guys already respect the heck out of you. You've already had a huge impact on them. We need you well for the regular season, and we understand that you have to get yourself ready and you have a process. But we feel like the last 2 weeks he can take care of that process. And at some point he trusted us, and until 4 hours later when he didn't again, it came back at it. And so it was constant, but that's what makes him a great player. And it's fun to see kind of what goes into making people great. And I've really enjoyed being around Richard and seeing everything that makes him tick.
49ers GM John Lynch right here on the Rich Eisen Show. How good is Jimmy G, John? Everybody talks about seeing him up close and how good he is, and we saw just him and Deshaun Watson going at it in that preseason game was just a whole load of fun. But walk me through your evaluation, your process of looking at this kid and what we're expecting from him.
Well, he's supremely talented. I mean, when you just talk about arm talent, it's pretty special from that standpoint. And I would tell you that we kind of knew that. When we brought him in, Kyle studied him a lot at Eastern Illinois. You just turn on the tape, albeit limited. limited sample size, you could see the arm talent, but what you want to see is everything else. And I think the best compliment I could give him in the time that we were around him last year was just he made everyone better. I think that's what great players do, great leaders do. They make people around them better, and he did that. Our defense played better when he was our quarterback. How that works, I don't know, but it does, and that's what guys who have the ability to be special players do. And I think the answer to that question, how good is he? I think we're all going to see. And, we had to make a decision, and we felt really good about what we saw from Jimmy in every aspect, how he interacts with the guys, how seriously he takes his craft, how hard he works at it. And, we're pushing forward with it. I'm excited because I think the work that he and Kyle have had this offseason to get a higher level grasp of of our offense, I think it's going to make him a better player. And, I think everybody knows, including Jimmy, that that the expectations are big. But what I like most about him, and I think it was ingrained into him with how he was raised and then how he was raised in the NFL at New England, is you got to go show everyone. You got to go to work, and that's what he does each and every day.
And I had Peter King here in studio a couple weeks ago, John, and I turned to him. I'm like, will we ever know why he was available for just a second-round draft choice in the middle of the season? And he said only a handful of people know the answer to that question. He said the answers to that question, people who know the answer to that question is Belichick, Kraft, maybe Brady, and he said John Lynch. Do you know the answer to that question, John Lynch?
I don't, and I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, other than I'm appreciative and that we had the opportunity to bring a player in like that, and that's. Everybody says if you don't have that guy at that position, you're looking for it, and we certainly were looking for it. And we thought it would come via different avenues. We knew that there was going to be a good free agency crop, and that there were a lot of guys in both our first draft and our second draft. But we passed in our first draft, and we were kind of going about our business, and the opportunity presented itself, and we jumped at it. The thing I think that we did well, and it was probably Kyle showing more restraint than me, was just because we traded for Jimmy doesn't mean that he's our guy moving forward. We feel like it's worth a second-round pick to see, is this our guy? And, it was a short amount of time to figure that out, but, it was impactful, the time we spent around him. And there was a time where, we both looked at each other and said, we need to do this. And that's exactly what we did. And thankfully he was open to that idea of doing something long-term as well.
And when was that point? Was it a specific throw? Was there an aha moment in a game, in a practice, and anything? John?
Yeah, I would tell you it was probably I probably arrived a little earlier than Kyle. Kyle's got a high standard for quarterbacks. He works with them every day, and I think it was probably after the Tennessee game where Kyle came in and said, "You know what, this kid's pretty damn good. Go ahead and do this." And we flew down to L.A. and met with his representative Don Yee. And just said, listen, we've got a bunch of options at our disposal. We can franchise them. We can do that whole thing, but that's not what we want to do. We're going to come strong with our first offer to represent that we want to do this thing. And we did, and they were open to that. So that's kind of how it went down.
And then just one more question on this subject before we move on to Pat Bowlen, because I'm sure you're going to have something to say on that front. Kyle, I just love listening to his press conference. I could listen to him talk football, X's and O's all the time. Where does he rank with his dad on that front, do you think, John?
He's a lot more open and transparent. I think his dad was a little more old school in his press conferences. But that's a snapshot of basically why I hitched my wagon to him. I wasn't looking for a job in this side of football. But I had always had been introduced to it a little by watching my friend John Elway do it, and said, wow, if the right opportunity ever came up, I would love to do this. The right opportunity to me back then always meant, okay, if it happened in Tampa or Denver or back then San Diego, where I was from, something that just made a lot of sense for my family. But then, this situation kind of happened with Kyle where I thought he was going to get the job. I had been doing a lot of his games, and every time I talk to him, it's like one of those press conferences where you learn football. And, I think we would have great dialogue, and he later tells me he would learn from me. I would learn from him. And we just, I was always really engaged when I talked football with him. The part I would tell you that I didn't know, because you don't see that part, is like, how does he command a team? And that's where he's been off the charts good to me as well. So, I think we've got a tremendous head coach in Kyle for years to come. And now we all, it's great to think all these things. Now we got to all go do it, and we've got a great opportunity this season to do just that.
A couple more minutes left with John Lynch, 49ers general manager. You have the floor on Pat Bowlen being named a contributor finalist for enshrinement in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and why you believe that is deserving, John.
Well, first of all, for both Mr. B and Gil Brandt, I mean, you talk about two guys who just had a huge impact on this league. And, I got to experience Pat Bowlen. I used to see him all the time in Beaver Creek, Colorado. We'd go skiing there for Christmas, and the Bowlens would always be there, or after Christmas, excuse me. I was playing at the time, but, as soon as the season was over, and the Bowlens would always be up there. So that's really how I started to get to know Mr. Bowlen. Spent some time up there with him, and one of the great stories was when I signed as a free agent with the Broncos. Mr. B, was thrilled. We had a press conference, did the whole deal, and then I got called up to his office, and he said, I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the years here in Beaver Creek, and we always talked about maybe this coming to fruition, you becoming a Bronco, and we've done that now. But here's the deal: no more skiing. we don't do that.
It's fine if you were skiing for the Bucks, but not the Broncos. Is that what he said, basically?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And don't even try it, because I've got a lot of sources. I got a lot of people out here, and I know every time one of our guys skiing. so then you know what I did? I skied in Montana from then on. So that was always our running joke. But I would tell you, the thing with Mr. B is, like, a lot of places, and I don't think it's lip service. Of course, everyone wants to win championships. That was what he was all about, was winning and giving his team an opportunity each and every year to do that. And he was always, it helps me a lot to this day, because he was always there as an owner, showing his presence, but never meddled, let people do their work. Just a tremendous person, and I think it's long overdue. And yeah, I think he belongs in the hall. And I had a big smile on my face when I saw that yesterday.
So do you, John. You belong there. I know you can't say anything in response to that, but it'd be great if the two of you guys go in together next year. So I just say that out there, and then. I've got one last question for you on the helmet rule. You, general manager, former defensive back, how do you think this is playing out so far in the preseason, John?
Yeah. So, the best thing I saw on that was Belichick, who he has a way of saying things. And I saw a quote where he said, look, it's not my job to like it or not like it. It's my job to understand it and teach it. And I agree wholeheartedly with that. I would say that I think where we're all trying to figure it out is the understand part. I think everyone's a little, yes, the written language is there, but how are they going to enforce it? And I think everyone's feeling their way out. I think adjustments, as we saw earlier this week, I think a little bit of an adjustment to how it's going to be called. But, I haven't been around the league. You see these things before. I don't know as drastic of this, but they have a way of figuring themselves out, I think. And so everyone's just looking for clarity, and then it's everyone's job to adhere to it. I was in the room at the owners' meetings when this thing kind of came to bear, and I can't tell you there wasn't part of me going, wow, this is going to change the game forever, and we better be careful. But that's what everyone decided to do, and so now it's you got to teach it. And we have a lot of guys on our staff. Robert Saleh from came from the Seahawks, and he had previously worked with Pete Carroll. They teach that rugby style, so we've already been teaching it. But as I used to say, sometimes when I would get fined as a player, to whoever was hearing my appeal, you do know that your head is attached to your body. Sometimes these things are unavoidable, but you got to do your best, and everyone's, I think, striving to do that.
John, you are the best. Thanks for the time. Thanks for the call. I know you got a Sunday night game against the Rams coming up, so that's in San Francisco. I'm trying to see if you're going to be down here in Los Angeles taking on the Chargers. Maybe we'd love to see you.
Yeah, we do have the Chargers at some point there.
Okay. I'd love to see you.
Yeah, we'll stop by. That'd be fun.
That'd be great. John, you take care.
Okay, Rich.
That's John Lynch, general manager of the Niners, here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.